Today, I'm going to talk to you about a camera lens. Many people who probably subscribe to this channel did so because of my camera reviews or my lens reviews or my audio equipment reviews. I feel like that's the thing that brings people to this channel or brought people to this channel, but I haven't really bought a lot of camera equipment lately outside of that little portable user drone, the one that follows you. But I bought a new camera lens, and it's been a really long time since I bought a camera lens. And as I've been developing as a videographer and as someone who makes YouTube videos, I definitely fall within the prime lens supporters. When I'm out traveling, I get the functionality and the practicality of a zoom lens. But when I'm home and I'm shooting these videos in this frame right here, I like to use prime lenses, and the majority of the videos that you have probably seen over the last 2 years, I have filmed with the Sony 35mm 1.8 lens. It's the older one, and it's great. It doesn't breathe. I think this is a cool shot, but I've been thinking maybe I should be a little bit wider. And I have a 20mm 1.8, and that's a great lens too. It kind of gets this like fisheye effect around the edges. And I was like, maybe that's a little too wide for this shot. So is there something in the middle? I was kind of looking for like maybe like a 28 prime. There isn't really a 28 prime. Sony has like one 28 prime, like a 2. I kind of felt like it wouldn't get good bokeh at a 2, or like, you know, there's better options out there. Enter the Sigma 24mm f1.4 art lens for the Sony E-mount. I bought this a couple of weeks ago, and I'm getting used to the lens. I'm starting to use it. I don't know what the order of the videos that I'm going to publish, but I started using this lens on some of my lighting test videos that I did recently. What I can say about this lens right now is that I find it to be extremely well built. It feels really sturdy in the hand. It's beefy. Sony has a competing 24mm 1.4 lens, which likely would outperform this lens from a focus breathing and autofocus perspective. But this lens, Sigma completely revamped their autofocus technology for this lens. And in my previous experiences, this thing has been sharp. It's been following the autofocus just fine. And one of the things that I consistently see bad feedback on, both for this lens and for the Sony 24mm 1.4, is focus breathing. The Sony lens, because it is Sony, and I have a Sony a7 IV, there is a focus breathing compensation setting that would not work with this third-party lens. But I have to say, I haven't seen any focus breathing on the Sigma lens since I've started using it. Cool thing about this lens is because it is more advanced and because it's a 1.4, it's forcing me out of my comfort zone, and it's forcing me to mess with things in the camera settings that I don't typically do. And the other thing that I like about this lens, and it's similar to the Sony 24mm G Master, is that there's a whole bunch of buttons on here that allow you to control settings like aperture, like focus. It lets you lock the aperture rings, it lets you lock the focus settings. But I thought, cool, as soon as I have it set to the manual settings, I can adjust the aperture directly on the camera with what I had set before. Wrong. It had to be set to aperture priority, then I could get it down to the 1.4, and like I said, then there were some other things. Whatever that aperture priority thing, I think that was set to 60, that was set to 60 frames per second, so then that cropped it in, so then like I had to go and change all this other stuff. Let's go back to my impressions of this lens. In my usage so far, the lens has been very sharp, especially at the center, which is what I wanted, right? Because again, bokeh and the edging at a 24mm lens, because it's wider, you're expecting distortions and lack of clarity around the edging. That's my issue with the 20mm 1.8 that I have. So the fact that it looks so tack sharp in the middle is very impressive. I've really enjoyed what I've seen from the lens so far, and I'm looking forward to using it more. In my first test, I'll show, I popped it on. I realized that I needed to set it to the manual aperture setting to get it to 1.4, and then I'm like, oh, this is looking really cropped in for a 24 millimeter lens. This looks similar to my 35. I literally say that on camera. The shot's a little bit wider than, it's a little bit tighter than I thought it was going to be at 24 millimeters. It dawned on me after I went behind the camera again, and I'm like, oh, it's at 60 frames per second, and it's cropping on the A7 IV. So then I had to fiddle around with it. This is the 24 millimeter Sigma 1.4 art lens for the Sony E-mount. This is set to aperture priority mode. I have it down to 30 frames per second. And when I have it in at 30 frames per second, it is not cropping finally. So this is the full 1.4. This is the 1.4 at the full 24 millimeter range. Those lights are my bokeh testers. That's why I turn them on. And half the time, the J and the L lights, I completely forget to turn them on for probably half of my videos. But that's why I turn them on, because I'm usually like, I just want to see what it looks like in the lens and if the lens is doing anything cool. I'm gonna get closer. I mentioned in the other video, when I was filming on the 35 millimeter and I was holding the lens, that this lens is so sharp. It's a very sharp lens, and like I noticed it not when I was recording, but when I was going back and sort of editing some of the other stuff that I initially used the lens for, I was like, wow, that looks really cool and sharp in the middle. So this might also be a thing, like where I get a little bit closer to the camera, and you're getting kind of a wider shot, which again, probably, you know, I'm sure someone who's a lot more experienced with making video than I am is probably like, duh, that's the whole point of all of this there, dummy. That's the point. You're getting all of the wideness in the background, but you're going to get close and it's going to be all nice and crispy in the middle. So I don't know. I've gotten so much feedback about other videos that I've done where it was too close to my face, and, you know, I was doing some kind of product review and people are like, you're too close, you're too close, you're too close. So like, it kind of freaked me out. I've been like sort of pushing back and away from the camera for the last year because of a lot of that feedback and trying to do like a wider shot in general. But I kind of think the vibe is get close, but then you can see all this other stuff in the background kind of, and you're getting a wider version of the shot. As a whole, beefy lens, well-built lens, like all the buttons, very similar to the G Master, but I think I paid under $800 for this lens. I think I want to say $739. I'll correct it down here. But it was either $800 or it was like $739. And the G Master 1.4 is like $1,300. And for what I'm using it for, and for the fact that I have a 35-1.8 and I have a 20-1.8, like, yeah, I didn't want to spend all that money, but I wanted to try the 24 focal length. And I have a zoom lens that had the 24 focal length, but it was at a 2.8. And, you know, when I use that and the background, you know, you get no bokeh at that. So I was like, I would like to maintain the bokeh. I like the creamy bokeh, but I don't want to pay $1,300. So thank you, Sigma. Cool. Let's keep using the lens and figuring out what makes this thing special. So they say that patience is a virtue, and I am exhibiting some patience. This is months later. I have been doing a portion of this 24 millimeter, this Sigma 24 millimeter 1.4 camera lens review for the Sony E-mount system, full frame. I've been playing with this lens for months. I never do this. Whenever I get a new toy, I always take it out of the box, play with it for a couple hours, do a review, and call it a day. But I have done at least 5 different videos with this lens, and I've edited with it, and I have a good feel for what I like and what I don't like about the lens. One thing that you may be noticing right now is that I'm standing. I haven't been standing in a shot unless I'm, you know, doing, like, I've been doing stuff about clothes lately. But I haven't really done a standing shot in a really, really long time. And because of this wide frame, I've done that. And you'll see in a previous section of the video a couple of minutes ago, I said, oh, let me try to get close, but you can see wide. So what do I like about this lens? It's sharp. It's well built. It's cheaper than the Sony. I don't think that this lens is subpar or so much less than the Sony lens. I think from a focus breathing perspective, especially if you are using this thing on the run, if you're running gunning and you're not on a static tripod situation, you may run into problems where you want that breathing compensation functionality with the Sony lens. But for my purposes, for what I'm doing, this thing has been great. One of the things that I have noticed, and I'm rather curious to see if this happens in the background right now, I see a lot of banding with lights. So I always have those lamps up behind me, and in multiple videos, I've seen quite a bit of banding from coming out of them. So that's a frequency issue with 30 frames per second versus 24 frames per second usually. But I've noticed for whatever reason, this lens seems to pick up on the banding a lot. And I've been mentioning that throughout the video, and I said I showed something with my dog, and the first time I took it out of the box and I put it on the camera, I noticed there was some weird banding. So I don't know if it doesn't like these lamps in the background specifically, but that is something that I've been noticing. I literally am trying out, this is the first time I'm trying out a completely brand new light right here. So I'm wondering if that changes anything, because I'm also, because it's a digital panel lamp, I can control the color temperature. So I'm also really curious because this is a yellow hue in the background due to the shades, and this is a 5600 right now. And you know, if you're not like a super deep camera nerd, like color temperatures and key lights and background lights, all of this is a thing. When you buy new equipment, you're hoping that it opens up new possibilities, new options, new thought patterns for you. And this lens did that, right? A 24mm lens has done that for me, because this has gotten me off of my rear end. I have gotten off of my butt, and I'm standing and I'm getting in front of these things, and because the shot is wider, I feel like it is giving an attractive perspective of the background. Maybe because I also kind of put the belts up on the wall, it kind of fills up some of the white space that's been very present on the wall. Also, let's just do that real fast. What's that looking like, the little sign? I am sad that you don't see the sign when I'm standing, because I do like that sign. I'm also trying to figure out a way to get like a bigger version of that sign, because that would be cool with more lights. But I do really like the build of this lens, the buttons on this lens, the cost of this lens for what you're getting. It's almost half, right? Again, I think I paid whatever I paid. I did it before. It was in the 700s, in the mid 700s, versus the Sony, which I think it was $13.98. This thing's almost half the cost. And I don't think that it's half the value or half the functionality. If you are worried about focus breathing, that might be a thing where you want the compensation. But also, mind you, the way that Sony manages the focus breathing via the compensation tool is to crop somewhat. So you are going to lose some of that 24mm when you activate the focus compensation or the focus breathing compensation. So that's something to factor in too, right? Because you're not going to get the full 28 when you do it that way. And for me, like, that would probably be because I got the ceiling. Well, maybe it'd be good they cut off the ceiling a little bit. Something to think about. But I really have enjoyed using this lens, and I've been using it, like I said, for months, and I've been using it in all of my videos, and I've been doing all of these standing talking head shots and showing off some fashionable stuff. Again, I don't know when I'm going to post this one. Some of the fashion stuff or clothing things I've already posted. And oh, by the way, you don't always have to use a 1.8. You know, again, if you're trying to show a full, complete, clear shot all around, you don't want to have 1.8 or 1.2. If you have a 1.2 lens, you don't want that on. If you're outside, you may want the whole shot to be clear, and you may turn it on, especially if it's outside and it's during the day. You may be at a 4 or a 5 or a 6. Tools for the purpose. And anytime I do something that looks cool or creative, I want people to sort of notice it, or at least appreciate it, or at least to be visually appealing when they're watching these videos, to sort of say, there's something cool going on here. Faster lenses with lower aperture gives you options. But you also have to understand that it's not the right tool for every case. And that's been a fun journey to explore and to learn about over the last couple of months. And I still love my 35mm, and there's a piece of me that says I'll probably go back to using the 35mm at the tighter shot, because I do like when the shot is sort of encapsulated to just those lights. But it's also kind of good to stand. I don't want to sit in front of the camera for 45 minutes doing a talking head thing, and I usually cut it down to less, but I'm usually in front of this camera for an hour to 45 minutes saying things. it's kind of better to stand, and plus you don't get the creaky, the bench that I use is always creaky and it's making noises, and I'm constantly having to edit that out. So maybe less standing, or maybe more standing and less sitting is good for all kinds of other weird, unthought about reasons. This is a cool lens. If you're doing a talking head shot, save the money, buy this one. It's got all the buttons, it's got similar performance. If you want the focus, breathing compensation, buy the Sony. There you go. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for always, watching and asking questions and encouraging me to keep making videos. And also, let's hope that the cool new panel light is better than the shitty ring light that I've been using. So thanks for watching, everybody. I'll be back with another video when I film it. Take care.